Welcome back. It is time to finish up the week, and it's power rankings time. Again, this is the bookend for the week. This is where we find out who I feel is playing the best hockey right now, and who are the Buffalo Sabres, who are still 32nd. You know, the 32nd joke. It's I don't have a reason to get rid of it. I don't have a reason to stop putting Seattle on the board as 31st because Buffalo hasn't won a game. 6-23-4 right now. They lost all 4 games in regulation they played this week. They found creative ways to lose each game this week. They lost every game. And yeah, it's to the point where we're all kind of rooting for them because, like, come on, you don't get 19. Come on, no, they're going to get 19, aren't they? All right, number 30. And this was tough this week because they went 1-2. But they got absolutely annihilated once this week, too. So they dropped 3 spots, and that's Detroit. Detroit's definitely playing out the string, right? They're playing it out well. The effort's there. They get slaughtered by these guys, Nashville, who realize they need wins in order to get near a playoff spot, and they've got wins to do it, but they did it at the expense of the Wings, who got a nice victory over Columbus today. We'll see if they do it again tomorrow. If they do it again tomorrow, the team that's in 29th may end up dropping down beyond them. This team moves up 1 spot. They went 1-2 this week, and that's Anaheim. So they secured themselves victory over the St. Louis Blues, but they're still 8th in the West. So East, Central, West. Yeah, these are the 3 at the bottom. So there you go. Number 28, dropping 1 spot from last week. And I don't know. They went 1-2. They got a big win over Tampa, but was it? I mean, like, again, they won 1 game out of 4 this week. But because they only lost 1 in regulation, they were still 500. See how that works? 1-2. And then they play again tomorrow against Florida. So we'll see how that goes. Yeah, for Dallas, I can't see them going. They were supposed to be going on a run already, and I don't see it magically appearing at this stage. And yeah, it's too bad. And there's a lot of reasons you could find for it, but in the end, they just haven't had what they need in order to succeed so far this year. Number 27, and moving up 2 spots from last week, they went 2-0-1. They're now 12-20-4, and that's Ottawa. Ottawa's had a respectable season for themselves. They have. And if I had said at the start of the year that Ottawa was going to be around the mid-20s, I think that's acceptable. Considering the amount of kids that are still yet to come into this lineup, considering the kind of patchwork roster that's put together by Pierre Dorian for this year, 27th is, while it's not great, it's still they're ahead of 4 other teams, 5 if you include Seattle. And yeah, again, it's another one of those years where they're trying to build and then get back to being a playoff team after. Number 26, rough week. These guys are back down to where they were a couple weeks ago. They went 0-2-1 this week. They're 13-14-8 now, and that's Columbus. It's really been amazing. And yes, that's 3 already for the Central. But at least the next team for the Central isn't for a while. So we've got out of this, 4 teams in the Central are down at the bottom. But Columbus decided to kind of stay there. And that loss against Detroit today really ensured they'd be in this column. It was not a great week for them, and we'll see whether or not things turn around for Columbus in the short or long term. But I would think for this year, I think their playoffs is probably done. Number 25. They dropped 1 spot from last week. They went 2-2 this week, but the 2 at the end that they lost meant they lost a spot to the team they were playing against, and that's San Jose. So again, they go 2-2 this week. They didn't have a bad week, but they drop a spot because the team that beat them twice has passed them. So the team that beat them twice this week, they went 3-1 on the week as well. So while San Jose is now 13-16-4, they're 16-14-5. They move up 2 spots, and that's the Arizona Coyotes. So the Coyotes get out of this column. They move into 6th place in the West is where I have them, and 24th overall. And they're right there with St. Louis now. Like, St. Louis has now fallen down to the level where Arizona can absolutely just reach out and touch that fourth playoff spot, and maybe they can reel that in. So, yeah, the team they had 7 games in a row against in St. Louis, and that could be your fight for the final playoff spot is between those two. And they've already had their matches against each other, except one. So, right? Number 23, this team drops 4 spots from last week. They went 1-2-1 this week. They even dropped from where they were in their division, in my eyes, too, and that's Philadelphia. It was a rough week for Philadelphia. Yes, the win they had to close things out against the Rangers was important and all, but it was a rough week. So all that win over the Rangers does is make sure they're still kind of in the driver's seat when it comes to 5th spot in the division, but the Rangers are steadily climbing, and it still looks like the Flyers are a team that's in trouble. So they're all the way down to 23rd. I know that's the lowest they've been this year on a power rankings. It's been remarkable considering this time last year when the NHL was on a pause, they were number 1. I had them number 1 on my power rankings that last week. I was like, they're playing the best hockey in the league. And right now, that is not the case. Number 22. These guys dropped 4 spots from last week. There were some drops and some risers this week. They ended up going 0-2. They're 16-18-3, but it's how the Canucks go 0-2. So it would appear that once Demko wasn't, a world beater, and their goal scoring dries up, those two things put together, they're in 22nd. And it's remarkable how quickly we went from maybe no. So right now they're only a couple of points behind Montreal, but Montreal has 6 games in hand. So even if Montreal only wins 2 of those, it's a bit of a climb. And for Vancouver, those back-to-back losses against the Jets should probably change Benning's mind about what to do at the deadline, but he goes day by day, so no idea. Number 21, staying in the North. These guys went 1-3 this week. They dropped 6 spots from where I had them last week. It was a rough week for Calgary. And again, they did pull it out tonight. With the victory over the Jets, it bounced them ahead of Vancouver. Because I was trying to debate between those two, and I said, all right, well, Calgary got a victory over Winnipeg, and Vancouver did not. So Vancouver goes to 22, Calgary goes to 21. And for the Flames, that was a desperately needed victory tonight to go with the losses they had this week, and they need to turn it around because, much like Vancouver, they're trying to chase a team down that has games in hand on them in the Montreal Canadiens. So both the Flames and the Canucks in a very similar position. We'll see whether either of these teams can climb the board next week. Number 20. These guys go up 2 spots from last week. They went 2-2. And I have to say, the New Jersey Devils are playing very good hockey right now. So this is one of those examples of a team that ends up being relatively high on this board compared to where they are in the actual standings. And it's because I think New Jersey's playing some pretty good hockey. And yes, they're pretty far out of the playoff picture. They're not very likely to make the playoffs. It's very, very remote that they would make it. But 2-2 this week. They were 2-1-1 the week before. So 4-3-1 over the last couple of weeks. They're winning more than they're losing. It's just they dug themselves into a bit of a hole. But when you look at some of those wins, they played well. So again, I have them all the way up to 20th. I think that's the highest they've been this year. But they might have been higher towards the start of the season. Number 19. I know this is the lowest these guys have gone. They lost all 3 games this week. And so they dropped 5 spots, and that's St. Louis. So last week, St. Louis, who had not been playing very well, I said, well, I'm going to give them a week. I'm going to see if, that was just a bad week and they're going to bounce back, and it didn't happen. And the loss against Anaheim is particularly concerning because that's the team they need to beat. Their schedule is going to be tough from here. And for St. Louis right now, I actually have them 5th in their division. I actually have them playing the 5th best hockey right now. And the rival that might be the one that actually ends up getting that spot, although Arizona's in that running as well. These guys only went 1-2 this week, so they're 13-13-6, but that's the Kings. So I have the Kings just 1 spot ahead of St. Louis, and we'll see whether or not the Kings hold that spot. So what happened for the Kings this week is that they actually end up going up 3 spots. Why? Because St. Louis, Calgary, and Vancouver, I felt, had worse weeks than they did. So people just go to the end and, why were the Kings so high up? Because bad weeks here. Bad week here. And it buoyed their chances. You're even going to be surprised at one of the teams that didn't play this week. There's only one that didn't play this week. They actually moved up. Not playing makes them look better, apparently. Number 17, and I debated about this one. I really did. But they move up 8 spots from last week. They won all 4 games they played this week. They're 17, 17, and 1, and that's Nashville. So Nashville moves up 8 spots. They go from here to here in a week. And I felt like that was enough. So I still have them 5th in their division on the overall board. I felt that was high enough. But the team I had in 16th, they were 2-1 this week. And the one loss was tonight against Nashville, and that's Chicago. So Nashville moves up 8 spots. Chicago moves up 4. They won 2 games against Florida at a time where it looked like they were ready to just fall right out of there. If it wasn't for those 2 wins against, but again, those 2 wins happened. So for Chicago, I moved them up to 16th. Nashville, I have at 17th. If Nashville wins tomorrow over Chicago, these 2 teams switch spots. It's really that basic. Every day I do the power rankings. I update the board every day. And if, let's say, St. Louis was playing New Jersey wins 4-1, all right, that's an easy flip. I can just swap those teams. Easy peasy. So, Nashville and Chicago playing tomorrow. If Nashville continues their ownage of Chicago, they'll jump past them on the power rankings. And their odds of making the playoffs go up substantially if they can win games like they have been lately. And for Chicago, again, nice fight back by them. Number 15. These guys move up 2 spots from last week. They went 2-1. They're 15, 14, and 4, and that's the New York Rangers. The Rangers have clawed their way back into the picture. They've done it by beating teams they need to, in Philadelphia especially. And we're going to find out in the coming weeks whether or not this is legit and whether or not they're able to come back and do this. So tomorrow, for instance, tomorrow morning, they're playing the Capitals. If they can beat the Capitals, yeah. And they've beaten the Capitals 3 out of 4 meetings this week. So they may very well find themselves moving up the board again should they actually win that game tomorrow. But yeah, for the Rangers, I think that's the highest they've been all year. Number 14, this is where it gets unusual. So they didn't play this week. There isn't really a record for me to use for these guys. But the Montreal Canadiens move up. So basically for Montreal, they had a better week by not playing than Calgary or St. Louis. Those are the 2 teams they pass. So by virtue of Calgary and St. Louis having rough weeks, Calgary 1-3, St. Louis 0-3, Montreal, by not playing, they come out this week looking better. And they're up to 14th on the overall board. And that's one of the unusual things is when a team doesn't play and they end up moving up or moving down, which on my NFL power rankings isn't that unusual. When I start my Major League Baseball power rankings, hopefully you aren't seeing a lot of stoppages there as well. But that's a few weeks down the road. And so Montreal all the way up to 14th. Number 13. They went 1-0-1 this week, but they dropped 4 spots. Because Boston, again, that win over Buffalo today just didn't fill me with the sense of, yep, they're back. And then there was the loss when they emerged from their COVID pause. And it's just, it's understandable. It's probably going to take them a while to get it together. But I couldn't have them higher up than some of these other teams that I feel like are playing better right now. So, yeah, Boston drops down to 13th, even though they didn't lose in regulation this week. But a win over Buffalo, again, I couldn't say, well, they won over Buffalo. I can't drop them down. Everybody wins over Buffalo. It's 17 in a row. So, yeah, they're 13th. Number 12, dropping 2 spots from last week. They lost in overtime tonight. It's the only game they played this week, and that's Edmonton. Now, for Edmonton to be down in 12th, it really is a matter of other teams passing them more than them having a bad week. Again, they lose that game in overtime against Toronto, which was a key game. And it felt like, all right, so if Edmonton wins this game and Toronto loses, especially if it was in regulation, which it looked like it could have been, it was 3-1 after 2. I was like, all right, so if that holds out, then, the Oilers will have to bump them up a bit and Toronto will have to bump them down a bit, but it didn't hold. And so Edmonton stays in the same spot they were at the start of the night. Didn't penalize them, but again, There were a couple of teams that passed them during their week off. So the Oilers and Montreal get close together, even though their 3-game set never happened. It's supposed to. They're supposed to announce changes to the schedule this week. You're running out of time, NHL. Announce it. Number 11, this team moves up 2 spots and is one of the reasons why Edmonton drops. So they went 3-0-1 this week, and Pittsburgh is getting better. Pittsburgh's starting to round into playoff form, which is bad news for everybody. Again, they're right now, they're 22-11-2. Again, they move up 2 spots from last week. It's been a gradual climb for Pittsburgh. And as I've said before, that's how these should work. I do see some power rankings where it's just this team's up, then they're down, then this is up, then this is down. Yeah, if at the end of the year, your power rankings, you're looking at teams and it looks like a heartbeat, that's probably a little reactionary. But Pittsburgh's just been plugging away at the wins, and they're moving their way up. They're almost top 10. Number 10 on the board, they went 3-0 this week. They move up 2 spots from last week. And that's Minnesota. So Minnesota had a very good week after what was a very rough week. And for Minnesota, they stay 3rd in their division. They're pretty comfortably 3rd on this board. You can see where the Kings and the Blues are there. But yeah, for Minnesota, it was a rough go against Colorado. But that's behind us now. And so Minnesota claws their way back into the top 10 with those games against Colorado kind of forgotten for right now until the next time they play them, right? Number 9. These guys move up 2 spots from last week. So they were 11th last week. They were 3-1 this week. They lost tonight. If they had won tonight, they would have been in this row, but they didn't. So Winnipeg sits at 9th. So they sit at the top of this row here, and they're number 2 in the North. And yeah. So they did move up just a couple of spots. It gets harder and harder to move up. It's easier to move up in this area than it is to move up here. Because I will say that every team from, I'll say 12 and up, I'll just leave Bruins out of this conversation for now. Every team from 12 and up, I could see them going on a run in the playoffs. And if the Rangers made it to the playoffs, wouldn't rule them out. Chicago, you've got Kane, you've got Taves, maybe coming back right for playoffs. Could happen. It could happen. Okay, so if it doesn't happen, they got Doc back tonight, so that's something. But yeah, I honestly, I think the playoffs this year are going to be really interesting because everybody knows everybody else. Whoever you meet in the first round, you've met them a minimum of 8 times during the season. You know them very well. So with that level of familiarity, the hate level goes up, and I think there's more unpredictability about who might actually win. But again, there's the Jets at 9th. Number 8. These guys went 2-0 this week. They ended up staying in the same spot as last week, and that's Toronto. Again, they had the 2 wins, just the 2 games played. And so the North, that's where you top out, is with Toronto in 8th spot. So last week it was really close together. This week 8, 9, 12 for the top 3 in Canada, and 14. And then you've got 21 and 22 where you find Calgary and Vancouver. So for Toronto, it was a good week. And really, for them, it was a matter of none of the teams in the top 7 I felt played badly enough to have a drop yet. But the team that's at 7, they're kind of on the verge. So they're 2-1 this week. So they only lost the 1 game. But the 1 game they lost tonight was kind of an alarming loss. They're 22-9-4 now, and that's the Islanders. That was an interesting loss for the New York Islanders. We'll see whether or not Pittsburgh can do that to them again. If Pittsburgh does that to them again, then I would have to consider Pittsburgh being up, Islanders being down, and odds are Pittsburgh just passes them through both teams making the move. Then I pretty much flip Pittsburgh ahead of them. But again, I don't want to overreact with 1 game, right? That's the whole thing here. Number 6. This team went 1-3 this week. So they had a rough week, but again, when a team is here and they have 1 rough week, I try not to penalize them too much, especially depending on who they're against. And in this case, they lost a couple of games against Chicago, and we'll see how they do. They did win today over Dallas. That's Florida. They're 21-9-4 now. So they went 1-3 this week, and they drop 1 spot from last week. Last week I had them in 5th. This week I have them in 6th. Again, tried not to penalize them too much because they've been very good for a long time. And it's one of those things where if I drop them way down and then I pull them way back up, if they have a really good week, yeah. So trying not to do that. So yeah, Florida, trying not to overreact, but keeping an eye on them. If Dallas, for instance, tomorrow went out and beat Florida 4-1, that'd make them 1-4 in their last 5, and then you start to wonder. At number 5, these guys went 2-2 this week, but again, it is a very, very tough league right now in order to remain in the elite, the top 5. So Vegas with a 2-2 week, they're 23-8-1, and they dropped 3 spots from last week. So they are down to 2nd in their division, right? Although they're 1st in the standings, they're 2nd right now on the power rankings board, and yeah, it was an up and down week for them. It ended off well enough with a victory in overtime, but even that game, there were some touch and go moments there. So the team that's in 4th place, a team that passed them, went 2-0-2 this week. So they move up 2 spots, although they only won 2 out of 4. They didn't lose any in regulation, and that's Colorado. So yeah, the Avs, they've marched up. They marched up another 2 spots last week. Last week, I know they were up last week too, so they've been going up for a while. And yeah, I have them 1st in the West right now in terms of which teams are where. So we've got 2 teams in the Central and 1 team in the East. Who's number 3? Well, these guys went 2-2 this week. So they dropped 2 spots from last week. Tampa. Again, Tampa loses tonight against Carolina. I felt that put Carolina ahead of them. But I didn't feel like I had to bust Tampa down a bunch because they were 2-2 this week. They lost a game against Dallas as well. So yeah, they dropped to 3rd. We'll see how they do from here, but be understandable if they had a few off games. And they came out with some fire tonight, and it seemed like that was, because of what happened against Dallas, but then they lost another one. So we'll see if that's the start of a pattern or not. Number 2, these guys went 2-0 this week. They move up 2 spots from last week, and that's the Caps. So the Caps, it's been a slow, methodical build, right? A really slow rise up, but they've made their way back up to number 2. It wasn't that long ago I had them, right in about the middle, and then they've made that slow climb. And there they are. They're number 2, and for the Caps, another good week. And we'll see whether or not tomorrow morning, they can get a victory over the New York Rangers, who've been a problem. Number 1. So these guys move up 2 spots from where they were last week. They won all 3 games they played this week. They're now 23-7-3, and that's the Carolina Hurricanes. And yes, I'm using Hartford Whalers for the Carolina Hurricanes, which is okay because I asked the city of Hartford, and they all went, yeah, it's fine. I went to the outskirts of Hartford and yelled, and the whole city said that's fine. We haven't had that team in a long time. So yeah, the old Whalers, the current Hurricanes, number 1. I got a kick out of Mickey Redmond today saying, or was it today or the last game, where he said that he asked people who they thought were going to be in the Stanley Cup final, and he said he heard people talking about the Avalanche and the Hurricanes, and he said, oh, you mean the Nordiques and the Whalers? So yeah, basically yes. And wouldn't it be great to see that in a Stanley Cup final, wearing both teams wearing reverse retros, so you have the Whalers and the Nordiques in the finals? I would love that. I would be so happy to actually see that. But yeah, the Canes are number 1 on the power rankings. There they are, number 1. Exciting team, deep team, and they've been playing very, very well. They're only 1 point out of 1st, and they're going to get another crack at Tampa yet. So we'll see if they can actually take 1st place in that division. So there you go. Power rankings for another week. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below as always. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through. You just happened upon this video. Thank you guys so much for watching, for all your support. I will talk to you again soon.